created a lot of conflicts and safety concerns and operational inefficiencies throughout. I don't need to tell anybody who's gone to Sunset Grill or maybe a longshore event or even down to the boat how confusing this site is from a circulation standpoint. It really is highly dysfunctional, and it has existed, but it's now gotten to a tipping point where the access rights, which were reserved for all 4 of these lots, they need to be exercised to redistribute access to this property. This, keep in mind, this is how the public, right now there's an existing public access on the waterfront. It's very difficult to get to, and whether you're going to the grill or to a longshore event, this portion of the site back here is where the public is trying to go. This part of the site, which is at the very front where the entrance is a boatyard, an operating boatyard that's very busy, a lot of equipment, a lot of moving parts, and not where you want people driving or going where they're not sure where they're supposed to be. It's created security concerns, liability concerns, and to summarize, it needs to be fixed. That was point number 1. The access was not only creating circulation conflicts, but there are also real constraints on the business operations of the marina. If you're hauling boats at the lift in and out of the water and you're hauling them out and you're immediately in front of people trying to go to a wedding reception, down alongshore, people drive wherever they want to go. It's not the way you would ever design it and set it up, and so we feel the time has come, that needs to be addressed, and the answer to, I think, the question earlier, what's the sense of urgency? Our view is this should have been done previously. Everyone benefits by moving this along. We're not suggesting that it be rushed, but a lot of thought has gone into the planning and into that easement agreement, which has been under active negotiation for 2 years. The second thing that's important to understand is that in order to fund the infrastructure improvements that are going to be required to upgrade this marina to the tune of about $20 million over a period of years, that's new bulkheads, new docks, new service facilities, club facilities, to make it what it really ought to be, the Gardellas have to find a way to fund these improvements, and part of that has to do with making the best utilization out of all the land so that the marina can coexist with some other uses that might make it other than Longshore and Sunset Grill. So the long-term master plan is important for them to understand where it's going in order to pay for all this. So reconfiguring the access and circulation is vital to the sustainability of the marina and became the focus of our work for over an 18-month period. And the negotiating process was managed by Attorney McCann along with Brian Smith. And we also got input from city staff along the way, because this starts to touch on other issues that were important to us and the city. Clearly, this agreement isn't the end. This clarifies the rights, but we see this as an ongoing long-term relationship where we work together to resolve these kinds of issues. For example, the Gardellas have agreed to pay 50% of the cost to maintain any of the costs of this section of road, off of which they would get access. So, and this is just real briefly a highly conceptual master plan that shows this ties into the Exhibit B that Brian mentioned earlier. This is the existing access point. There are 3 other access points that allow the traffic, rather than bottlenecking here and trying to force its way through the boatyard, to bypass the boatyard and enter these properties to improve the access. The Gardellas know that they will have to manage those access points. They're just as concerned about beachgoers who are trying to find a way to beat the system and avoid paying, and they're not going to park on the marina property because they're going to get towed. They enforce it. They have to enforce it. It is Every day, you will see people driving onto their property trying to find a place to park and jump the fence or walk around to try to get to the beach. So that's an issue we share, and the Gardellas are fully committed to making sure that whatever parking management plan the city has, their parking management plan will reinforce that. The important fact to note, and I think Brian McCann did a good job of bringing this up, was in the 1922 deed, when they gifted the land, the access, this is the language lifted directly out of the 1922 deed. You can read it. It's in probably the packet, but it was attached to the agreement. And it broadly, this is the end of Pasture Beach Boulevard, and it broadly defined that somewhere in the northerly and westerly portions of the park, wherever that might be, these 4 parcels have access. Well, that's not good enough. I mean, one could argue, well, we can go anywhere within the northerly and westerly portion of the park. That doesn't work. And so, I mean, it would conflict with other things the city is doing. So we said, we need to work this out. And the easement agreement goes into a lot of detail about who pays for what and how it's worked out. But those rights exist. They existed when the land was given to the city. It was a reservation they made. When they deeded the land, they reserved these rights. And so it's not the creation of, the access rights are not newly created. It was not specific as to utilities, and one could debate, well, what would they, in 1922, as again, Brian mentioned, these agreements, easement agreements often didn't need a lot of detail. People worked it out as they went. Almost 100 years has gone by, and we need to be more specific. Everybody needs to understand what the rules are. So the negotiated easement agreement clarifies the right-of-way location and other issues that are not addressed in the deed, such as use restrictions that you'll note. Some of these use restrictions that exist today might not be consistent with the deed restrictions that were put in place. That has been clarified. There are other issues that have been clarified so that everybody knows where it's going. We think it's vitally important to both the current owner and the city to clarify these issues and finalize the implementation of a sustainable master plan for Cove Marina. So that's the background and the context of it, and I'm going to let the attorneys talk specifically about what's in the agreement, because that's really what is before